Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 160 of Humanity Rising. On a daily basis since the 22nd of May last year, Ubiquity University and over 300 partners from all over the world have come together to provide an open space so that as we traverse this extraordinary pandemic, all of us in some form of lockdown and engaging in social distancing and wearing masks and concerned about our public health and the future of humanity on this earth. We have an opportunity to share our experiences, to share solutions, ideas, visions of the future, and most importantly, to come together and confer as to how we can increase our strategic effectiveness so that people of goodwill can ensure that the world beyond the pandemic is more healthy and abundant and regenerative and in alignment with natural systems. We decided to open our Humanity Rising sessions for 2021 around the theme of regenerative cities, because arguably it's our cities in which almost all of us reside that will determine to a large extent the future of humankind. As we open today, I thought it would be worth just reflecting on the importance of cities. Cities have been coterminous with civilization itself. Every civilization, and Arnold Toynbee counted about 23 of them that we know about, have started with cities, because it's in cities that people have come together in large numbers. And when you bring people together in large numbers, the entire context and content of what it means to be human changes. For hundreds of thousands of years, we were hunter-gatherers, and we existed in small groups of 20 to 30, maybe 100 at the largest. And we moved around and we hunted and we gathered fruits and berries, and then, for reasons yet unknown, about 10,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent in Upper Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates River, agriculture started. And that allowed stability. And human beings began to settle. And in those settlements, the earliest cities emerged. And it was Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher, about 2,500 years ago, that first contemplated the importance of cities in his masterwork on politics. He said, it is the polis, the marketplace, where people come to trade ideas and goods in an urban setting that is the basis of politics itself, which is the discernment through which large aggregations of human beings determine how they're going to live together, what they value, how they execute justice, how they care for the needy, how they educate the next generation, and how they fashion the instrumentality of governance. All that happens in the polis. And that is both the challenge, the agony, the ecstasy, the adventure of civilization over the past thousands of years. It's always been located in the cities. So I just thought this brief reflection would be useful perhaps to all of us as we now turn our attention for the second day on to the cities. But before we do, as we always do day by day, let us just take a pause and let us close our eyes and be comfortable in any way that you feel inclined, and take a few deep breaths and place your attention on your heart. Try to listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and appreciation for being alive, being in a city, being with people at this moment of great choice for humankind. Thank you, everyone. Now, with an open heart and with deep gratitude, I want to first indicate that starting next week, because of the importance of cities, we're going to be offering a course that Marilyn Hamilton and Beth Sanders and others have developed especially for Humanity Rising, and will be offered through Ubiquity University. Marilyn will put the link in the chat. It's Beyond Resilience, how cities can help shape the post-pandemic world in a way that puts human well-being at the center within the context of ecological systems and ecological constraints. We want to really emphasize the importance of cities as we embark on our pathway for 2021. So there's a small little course, a little micro course as we call it, that will enable you to have a deeper dive. Now I'd like to turn the program over to Beth Sanders. As you know, she's the author of Nest Cities, how citizens can serve cities and how cities can serve citizens. She's the president of Populous Planning, an urban planning consulting firm, and she and Marilyn have convened this week of sessions for us on Humanity Rising. So Beth, I welcome you and thank you for your leadership in putting this whole week together. It's been off to a splendid start.
Thank you, Jim, for the warm welcome and the pulling in of the polis of the cities. And I love those words: the agony, the ecstasy, the adventure of cities. One of the things that I've learned in my work, in my practice with cities, and a little bit of research too, is that the work that we choose to do, each of us forever, has always been the force that generates and regenerates our cities. And our work is one of the ways we take action, whether it's paid work or unpaid work, it doesn't matter. So there's a big contribution we're each making as we even reflect this week on what is my participation in the city in which I live. So quick introduction of my colleague Marilyn, who I'm doing this with. She's the founder of Integral City Meshworks. She's the author of the Integral City book series, and we're going to see some of her maps and ways of thinking today, and I can vouch for their usefulness in practice out in cities and communities. We're both a pair of Canadians, but we have a range of people that are joining us over the course of the week that are certainly not Canadian and are certainly people from around the world and cities around the world. So we'll introduce you to them in a few moments. I'm going to just share my screen for a moment and give you a bit of an orientation to the week. So as Jim said, it's Cities Rising week. We figured, Marilyn and I, that there's an opportunity here to invite the Humanity Rising community into a reflection, and which leads to action and mobilization about the city that you live in or the community that you live in, and whatever size it is, I can bet you're connected to a larger city, that it's a dynamic living and evolutionary system. So our intention for the week is to give you opportunities to reflect about your relationship with the community and the city you live in and around, so that you can best serve it, so that it in return best serves you and your fellow citizens. And the ultimate purpose here is so that together we can serve together the well-being of our planet Earth, or Gaia. We have a plot for each day. So yesterday we talked about activating cities at scale. And Mark McCaffrey offered us a lens in on the power of 10 and multiple messages in that, and the reflections that came from our, as you'll meet shortly, our reflective city practitioners, is that the city at scale is in the sweet spot between the smallest of us and the largest human systems or natural systems. But there was also so much else in there, but there's a piece in there that is the takeaway for me, which is whatever scale resonates with you, whatever scale you work at, it's a legitimate contribution. Today, we're going to shift gears and we're going to look at cities as complex adaptive systems. They're living systems. And we're going to continue with the thread over the course of the week. On Wednesday, we're going to look at cities specifically from the lens of life cycle patterns when we look at governance. On Thursday, we're going to dig a little deeper into what does it mean to practice mutual agency. And the way I look at cities is ultimately what they are is a survival skill for humanity. So we'll play with that idea a little bit. And on Friday, it's really an integration day for the whole week, and really look at cities as a vehicle for regeneration, particularly when we're looking at our relationship with the planet and the ecoregion of our cities. Oops, I'm having a problem with my screen does not want to move. I'm going to stop sharing because it's not working. And one moment. Simply also to say that one of the frames that Marilyn and I are using is building on Donella Meadows' work about if the world were 100 people. And I have a slide that you can't see, but that's okay. There's obvious things like, well, half of the 100 people would be male and female. There's some other numbers in there that are super fascinating around if we were 100 people, 5 of us would speak English, only 5. And here we are as a community we're all speaking English or able to speak or listen well to English, but you'll notice in our guests on the call today that there are many other languages that would be first languages. The other interesting facet would be if we were a village of 100 people, 86 would be able to read and write and 14 would not. 40 of us would not even have an internet connection. So I shine a light on this simply to say that we're in a rather privileged place to even be in this conversation. So who is here among us participating with Marilyn and I in this experiment? We have about 25, 30, what we're calling a reflective practitioner. You're going to meet 9 of them today. A couple of them are familiar from yesterday. And you'll notice for those of you that are watching the program over the course of the week, this group of people is going to shift and change and come and go a little bit. They're all from cities around the planet. And honestly, they're just lovely people out doing their work in the world and really working to improve the communities that they're in. I'm going to pause for a moment and just confirm if my colleague Marilyn, if she could do screen share, because I think the next couple slides are really important for a visual for us for the call. And Marilyn, in particular, what I'm thinking about is the slide with the 5 maps. If we could go with that, please.
If not, Beth, I can do it.
Okay, Marilyn's rolling. Thank you, Rick.
Okay, Beth.
Okay, so one of the key maps that Marilyn has crafted. So this is coming off integral theory. Marilyn's reframed by looking at the city as a system and using the integral body of work. As Marilyn said yesterday, if you look at this slide and you think, oh, this is too complicated, I'm not sure what to think, don't worry, because we're going to simplify this for you. And Marilyn, if you would jump to the visual of map 1, there we go. So this is a map we're going to pay attention to today. And Marilyn, if you would go to the next slide, please. This is a visual representation of the earlier one. So for those of you that are familiar with the quadrants of integral theory, that's what this is built on. If you're not familiar with that, do not worry. The takeaway here is there's a magic in working with cities and understanding that there are 4 critical voices to even look and examine and work together at the scale of the city. Very simply, they are the citizens who we make our cities for. If the cities don't work for citizens, there's a problem. There's the civic managers who are the regulators of the city. All of our public institutions, whether it's health, school, city government, our business innovators are the entrepreneurial people that go out and physically build the city and make it, but they're also that creative hub. And then civil society is like the consciousness of the city, making sure we check in to make sure that, oh my goodness, I need to put my phone on mute. Sorry about that. Civil society plays a critical role in making sure that the actions we're taking are just, are effective, and they're like the consciousness of the city. And Marilyn, I'll get you to jump to map 4, please. And part of the frame also in the city, for those of you that are familiar with spiral dynamics, this is a graphic representation of Claire Graves' work by Beck and Cowan. And very simply, what I want to shine a light on today is there are a range of values that are active in the city. Sometimes they work well together, sometimes they don't. But with this understanding, we can support different facets of the city in working well with each other. So our plot of the day is to try on for size the notion of the city as a complex adaptive system that is alive, in which we are a part. I'd like at this point to invite our reflective practitioners to turn on their videos, and we're going to make them visible. And you notice that they have indicated their name, but also the city that they're living in. And I'm going to ask our reflective practitioners to quickly introduce themselves, and we'll hear more from them later. We're going to be ruthless and quick on this, reflective practitioners. So I'm going to ask you, when I call on you, to tell us your name and where you live. And if you were on the call yesterday, part 2 of your check-in is to just identify a thread that resonated with you yesterday. And for those of you that weren't here yesterday, absolutely not a problem, is your name, where you're living, and the work that excites you right now. And there's quite a few of us, so we're going to need to be quite expedient in terms of our time here. So your name, where you live, and either the work that excites you or a thread from yesterday that's resonating with you. And I'll start with Stanley, and after Stanley, it will be Patty. Go ahead, Stanley.
Thank you, Beth. So my name is Stanley. I am in Stockholm. And from the session yesterday, one of the things that stayed with me is the realization that we all have places that work for us. You could call it energy-wise, or work for us in terms of making us feel comfortable or not. And there are places where we definitely don't feel comfortable inside our cities.
And
that's
Stanley,
something.
did you tell us where you're living right now?
Stockholm, yes, I did.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Patty, or Stanley. Okay, Patty, and then Mira Michelle, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm situated in Cape Town at the moment, in South Africa. Beautiful, beautiful city, complex country. What stood out for me is the tension between the ease, the places of ease and the places of discomfort in our observations and our time right now with COVID, but also what it's bringing up in terms of the shadow and the gold. The splits are becoming more evident and shining into us brightly, giving us choice. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Patty. Okay, Mira Michelle and Lev.
Hello, fellow humans. I'm Mira Michelle, and I am currently like an hour south of Hanover. And what excites me about my work is the soul development that I'm passionate about in nature, nature's soul, and in human souls, and the values which expand upon that deeper connection to the earth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mira. Okay, Lev, and then Katerina.
Hello, Beth. Hello, Marilyn. Hello, everyone. Lev Gordon. I live sort of all over the world, but my base is in Izhevsk in Russia, and we work with 1,000 cities of Russian Federation, from very small ones to very large ones. We have a living cities community and network of practitioners using an integral approach to basically discover and activate the collective intelligence within the city using the frameworks from Marilyn and other colleagues from ours who will be present today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lev. Okay, Katerina and then Ranjani.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here and to share this nice conversation. I was listening from the audience yesterday, and I'm living in Barcelona. I'm Bulgarian. My original town is Plovdiv. It's the oldest living town, still living town, 30th century city. I'm coming from there. I was living in Sofia for 8 years and now 15 years in Barcelona. What inspiring me, I'm a physicist, so to me, what is moving me really in this life, it's this wondering how we are creating life from the rocks. You know, cities are rocks, but today with technology, we're bringing them to really living systems that they can have their own consciousness outside of the people. And this really amazing me. And I'm always walking on the streets, looking at all these technologies, how it's merging with us, the humans. It's crazy. And this conversation is being this community, to me, it's really so nice to share and this wondering, I mean, it's evolutive. We will not find a solution today because it's changing. We are living in something that it's in a movement. So each step that we are doing, it's creating a new road, and there is no end to this, and it's really exciting. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Katerina. Okay, Ranjani, and then Lynn, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Ranjani. I'm currently sitting in Bangalore in India. And what's exciting me right now is this, because of COVID, there is this collective criticality that has crept in, where we've started questioning things that we always assumed, which we took for granted. And this collective questioning is also bringing a spirit of collaboration, and a lot of people are coming together to try and change things. And this, for me, is the most exciting thing that could have happened over the last year. And this is one such community, and for that, I'm thankful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Lynn, and then Hugo. And Lynn, I just want to check in if you're there and how your sound is working. Okay, Lynn, we'll come back to you. There's a technical difficulty there. So Hugo and then Luis, please.
Yeah, my name is Hugo Araujo, and I'm living in Genval in Belgium. And originally, I grew up in Mexico City. What excites me more to be here is really trying to understand how to bridge in between living systems and the city. So thanks for the invitation to this conversation.
You're welcome. Thanks, Hugo. Luis, and then I'll check in with Lynn.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Marilyn. My name is Luis Camargo. I'm in Bogota, Colombia. My focus and what is most interesting to me is nature-based education and the role it has in shifting educational systems and regeneration, and both connected into how we can activate our regenerative capacities to shift the planet's, let's say, momentum. And from yesterday, one thing that was really evident is that nature is our comfortable space. We are nature. And this is a key part, I think, of what cities must consider. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Luis. Lynn, let's just check back in with you. I see you're not on mute, so let's see how the sound's working. Okay, Marilyn, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, and then I'll wrap this piece up, and then we'll check back in with Lynn before we continue. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Hi, Beth, and hi, everyone. I'm Marilyn Hamilton, and I'm as Beth indicated, and I think Jim also, that I'm the author of the Integral City book series and also the founder of Integral City Meshworks. I'm located in the eco-village of Findhorn in Scotland. But what excites me is being here yesterday, looking at the threads that Mark created and thinking about us as possibly the 10,000th generation on Earth, or somewhere in a sweet spot in the range of being able to look at the very small fractal of the individual to the whole planet. We are told that we have about 100 billion people who have ever lived on this Earth. And look at the ones who are shining on this screen. It really excites me to be able to work and explore with you all. So that's me. And I might just say something about Lynn, because I have connected with her in her Shanghai connection. Sometimes it's a little slow, and maybe we could invite Lynn to introduce herself in the chat so she is present that way. And just hope that her video can come back on. For those who didn't join us until after we all checked in, Lynn in Shanghai is at midnight. So we have to give a little bit of wiggle room for her to be able to join us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Beth.
You bet. So let's just sit in silence and receive Lynn's audio coming through, or we'll have Lynn introduce herself in the chat. So I'll just make for some spaciousness for Lynn. Go ahead, Lynn. So Lynn, there was a bit of a blast of sound. I think the chat is going to be the best way for you to quickly introduce yourself. And then hopefully over the next while, we can resolve technical things. So how about an introduction in the chat? Perfect. Thanks, Lynn.
One more thing, Beth, I can ask Rick, who is looking after the tech on this call, if he could also put a link to the file I gave him earlier for everyone's bios. And then everyone would be able to see the people who have introduced themselves, plus Lynn as well.
Okay. So for anyone who's not able to see the chat, I just want to relay what Lynn is putting there. So she says to start, okay, let's do it here. My name is Lynn, living in Shanghai for 6 years. It is a mega city. And I'll just wait a moment to see if there's more that Lynn is going to relay. We'll have an opportunity in a little while to hear more from Lynn. So here she says, what excites me for work is to be able to bring transformation. So before I hand off the torch here to Marilyn for the next part of our agenda, I just want to highlight that there's a few different roles on the call here that you're going to see over the course of the next hour. Marilyn and I are co-hosting this week, but we've pulled in some people to serve as reflective practitioners, most of whom you've just met. And their role on the call is we're going to invite the audience and these practitioners to reflect on their practice related to the theme of the day. And then today we're going to call on Luis to share some of his expertise, but we're asking Luis to draw on what he will have just heard from the reflective practitioners to land what he has to share about cities as complex adaptive systems. After we hear from Luis, we're going to go back to the reflective practitioners to see how what he's just offered resonates in us for our respective practices, for the work that we do in our communities, as we learned yesterday, at any scale. And we'll have some exchange and discussion there. And then we'll close. But when we close, I really want to shine a light on, for everyone on the live call, is immediately following this 90 minutes is part 2, which is super juicy, and it's new for the Humanity Rising community. There's a group of people have organized to host us all for an additional 90 minutes. And this is the second place is where you folks as a community are able to meet each other, to explore what you wish to take action on, who you might take it with, who might have ideas, and you can percolate. And my cautionary tale here is when you see the link in the chat for part 2, grab it and save it somewhere, because that's the only way to get into part 2 unless you're on their mailing list. But everyone on the call live is welcome to participate. And Stanley has just left it there, so thank you. And Stanley will post it multiple times, but I just want to flag for those of you that would like to continue to reflect more with others in community. There's an opportunity to do that right after this call. With that, let's pause. And Marilyn, over to you to lead us, all of us, audience, live or recorded, our reflective practitioners, in some reflection time. Over to you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Beth. I'd just like to invite everyone, all the reflective practitioners, everyone who's in the chat, everyone who's listening to us even in live stream, just close your eyes or soften your gaze and get comfortable in your space, in your body. Settle yourself into your space, immediately around you. Just Notice the boundaries of the walls, of the room, of the ceiling and the floor. Notice how your body is picking up the sensations that are in that space. What are you feeling? What might your gaze or your mind's eye see? What little sounds or even loud ones do you hear? Just let them pass by. Are there smells or tastes or some other way you just sense life happening all around you? And in this quiet space, notice how life is expressing itself. Notice if there's plants or animals or even minerals and crystals. A sense of all the elements and plants and animals of nature who are embracing you wherever you are. Notice your breath, how it ebbs and flows, contracts and expands. Reconnect with your heart that we connected with at the beginning of our session. And wherever you are, however you choose to do this, whether it's in your mind, or you wish to speak it out, hum it out, sing it out, draw it, whatever works for you, reflect. We are all Gaia's organs of reflection. And as we're sensing and reflecting, just notice in your community, where is there a place that makes you feel fully alive? In your memory, notice who might be there. What are the conditions and qualities that attract you? As we're connecting with these qualities of life, start to notice our body again. Wiggle your toes. Feel the life touching the ground. Feel your fingers and bring your arms and your torso back alive. And as you're stretching or noticing just the flow of energy through your body, when you're ready, open your eyes and come back into your space. And now we're going to just invite our reflective practitioners to notice what they noticed. And as our reflective practitioners share with us, we would invite our audience to observe what they share. How does it resonate with you or not? How does it resonate with your experience? Whatever ways you notice, just keep noticing how you notice and notice and notice. Notice how you connect with life. So I now would invite our reflective practitioners to share with us what came up for them in that reflection. Here's just a few things that might have occurred to you. How do you experience the city as a living system? Where in the city was it that it came alive for you? Are there any ways that your being in the city amplifies that living system? And I'm really curious about what happens when we act as if our cities are truly alive as living systems. So I'm going to call on somebody to start, and then I'm going to ask that person to choose the next person so that we can have some reflections from our practitioners. I see a big smile on Patty's face. So how about we start with you, Patty? And we're also going to have to be mindful of our time because we could all speak for a great length about this, but we want to make sure everyone gets a chance to reflect. So a little essence of what you would like to reflect on, Patty.
I'd like to reflect on the immediacy of that experience, because before I closed my eyes, I was aware of the light playing on this picture and lampshade behind me. And as I closed my eyes, I was aware of the trees blowing, the gentleness of the wind that we have today, and that play of the sun on me as I was hearing in the road close by, people going from work or the traffic kind of ending down at the end of the day. Feeling that juxtaposition between the energy of the trees. I've got big trees around me and the mountain behind it, and the dappled light that I'm looking out there, and this reflection there. And then slowly I became aware of the clock sounding behind, I think you, Marilyn. There was a tick-tock. And I got drawn in as though in a vortex with the sound of the zoom, a very slow, low quality sound. It felt like I was being drawn into the vortex right across the oceans to where you were. So that was quite a fun experience of being here, very present and noticing the juxtaposition and then feeling the connection over the waves.
Thank you, Patty. That makes me feel very connected. Who would you like to hear from next?
I would like to hear from Ranjani.
Thank you, Ranjani.
Thank you, Patty. The city as a complex adaptive system was a bit much for me to process. So I just said, we'll just think of it as an organism, something alive. It's very simple, something alive. And I started to think about what does that mean and what is the nature of this organism, and how can we look at it not as a mechanic would a car, but as a biologist would look at it, at an organism with curiosity and trying to figure out what's happening and why it's happening and what is the purpose of this being, and does it even know it has a purpose. And then I realized that it depends on how I'm looking. So I fly in to Bangalore on a flight at night, and I see the light, and the light spreads out beyond the city in tentacles out into the distance. And it's almost like a little slime that is growing out. And that's just a manifestation of the way that the city is growing. You go down to the streets, it's this overwhelming, crazy, mad place with traffic and noise, and you don't know what's happening. And then you realize, oh, I was so peaceful up there and everything looked so sorted, and here I cannot make sense of this. And then you go to your cafe and you're sitting and you feel at home and relaxed and okay, I can figure out this one space. And the city has this ability to make you every time see it in a new light. And I think this is the most curious of all beings. And then I leave my city. I go to another city, but I'm still in Bangalore because now, today, we are no longer connected only physically. I am connected online, I'm connected by mobile. I'm still living with my mind in my city. So I think it is a state of mind, it's a state of spirit, it's a state of being, and it is something that one very rarely lets go, which is why my name is Ranjani Bangalore ? Because right now I'm in many cities, all the cities that I've been in, I'm there. So it is something that we have not yet managed to define. And yeah, that's me.
Thank you, very beautiful. Who would you like to hear from next?
I would love to hear from Stanley.
Thank you. You can just put yes.
Thank you, Panjan. So as I was doing the stillness and the movement in the body following Marilyn's beautiful guidance, something that comes up for me is a question mark about what are the parts of my body that I haven't got access to by my awareness and my consciousness that are serving my body as a living organism. And then I started to reflect on what parts of my city are the same, that they serve me, they serve everyone in the city, but we are not conscious. And these parts, we could call them our unthankful. We are unthankful to these parts because we are not really aware of them. Sometimes they are the people behind those things that function in the city that we are not aware of. And something that's really vivid for me is the food that comes into the city that most of us have no connection to. The food that comes from the farms around the city, and sometimes the food that comes from people as far away as in other continents. And those people are alive, they have their wishes, they have their dreams, and those dreams are transported to us, you could say, through the food, and it comes to us as a gift, but we are not really aware of it. So if I am not in touch with my toes, because I'm not paying attention, at least I have my toe has a way of telling me if something is wrong. I will feel the pain, but I don't have that connection. If I'm not aware of the activities that are going on in, say, in India, where my food might be coming from, I don't get to connect to the pain, to the joy, to the suffering, and to the beauty that those people might be contributing to my life. Yeah. And that's maybe at a global scale, but even with my neighbors, there are neighbors who are contributing to my life and I'm not connecting to that because I'm not paying attention. And so this is for me, the aliveness of the city can come alive also as I come alive, as I become more alive and aware of what's going on inside my own body and my mind. Yeah, that's what kind of comes up for me.
Thank you, Stanley. And whose essence of aliveness would you like to hear from next?
From Katarina.
Katarina.
Thank you very much. I mean, to me, meditation is something really miraculous because I cannot say I am concentrated, but in one moment you have an image. And now on this question to me comes, I really enjoy walking, and what cities has, it's this, the most alive place is the streets. People walking on the street, just Saturday, Sunday, just walking. And however you know them or don't know them, seeing them, it's making you happy. When I arrived first time in Barcelona, I was totally alone, without the language, without the culture, totally on a new planet. And just walking around the streets of Barcelona, you connect to the spirit of the city. It's something it's abstract, you know. It's not necessary to have, how to say, face, but you can feel it, the energy, the emotions, slowly the culture. And Barcelona, it's a city, I think there is a few cities like Barcelona that are cosmopolitans and that create their own culture. And this is something that it's really incredible to me, how something that we perceive that is not human has a life, has its face, identity, built by these different people that are passing. Barcelona as a city, it's very interesting that they're not focused to keep residents for total your life. You can come to Barcelona, live 5 years, and it's okay for the city. And the city is teaching that this is part of Barcelona. It's not Spain, it's not Catalonia, it's not Europe. You're from Barcelona. And to me, this feature, it's what it's making us to be connected anonymously. However, I don't know the names and I can speak with everybody. It's not important that I don't know you 5 minutes ago. I learned it from the city itself, that just sharing the moment, it's enough, you know. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Katerina. That's very lively. I love Barcelona, and we heard yesterday how seeing no people on the streets was very alarming when we talked about what people were experiencing in different cities. So I'm going to actually call on Mira Michelle next, because I'm also going to order the next ones, and after Mira Michelle, it'll be Lev.
Thank you. It's good to be here with all of you. As I was reflecting and feeling, it's one of my primary jobs is to feel. Okay, I had to retrain myself to feel first, then to think. I was feeling this holding vibration, and I was feeling that each one of us were holding the space for the cities, and that felt like an affirmative to me, that I felt this opening here. And then I was feeling how the question emerged within me during the meditation about an adaptive complex system. And of course, as a founder of an institute called Sacred Female Rising and cleaning the cleanse site, the projects on our, that's a project I have, sorry, cleanse site, which we clean nature sites of past trauma. I immediately felt how nature holds the city. So then I felt this expansion, and I felt all the root systems underneath the city and how nature is holding. Really alive. It's an alive holding. You know, sometimes I think because we're so focused in on being in the city, right? We stop to realize that this alive holding is taking place everywhere we go in the city. And I think that's so, ooh, you know, then my juices start flowing. And then the third place I went was to each and every human, because I work very intensely with humans and groups. And I felt this alive nature within every human. So then I saw this nature holding and this human holding. And this system is complex, but yet it's also very simple. And I love to see the simplicity in many systems. And my feeling is when we value that a step more and allow those parts to connect, then the answers will vibrate from that intelligence. And then, of course, number 4, because I always love to do 4s. I do 3 or I do 4s. It's all so intelligent, right? It's all so super, super intelligent and juicy. And I love to flow with that, because I think as humans, we often underplay just how intelligent and how perceptive we are indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Michelle. Yes, and Findhorn, intelligence of nature is one of the principles that we co-design with. So yes, thank you for bringing that out. So I'll call on Lev next, and then hopefully Lynn, we can hear from you. And I put a little note in the chat, Lynn, if your sound doesn't connect, we'd still love to hear your reflection, and you can put it in the chat. So Lev.
Thank you, Marilyn. Well, I'm picking up from Mira Michelle and everybody who was before, and in a way, I want to just stay silent because there is so much wisdom and richness in everything we have already shared. And what I've done, I sat on the floor because I have a 4-year-old daughter who plays on the floor all the time. So there is a big mess in our apartment. And the reason I did it is because when we explore how cities operate, we see how many adult people who run the cities lost the connection with their inner child and with this aliveness that Mira Michelle was talking about. So what I felt during the little meditation today, but also what we are trying to explore, working with the city mayors, with the entrepreneurs, with the city leaders, is how we can connect to our inner aliveness in our daily action and try to connect to other people in the city, not on the mind-to-mind level, but on the heart-to-heart level, when we move from our individual boundaries to a more sort of interconnected sense of collective, collective, collective presence and collective action. And this is what we picked up from Marilyn's ideas and books and trying to implement. And there is an amazing case I just really want to share, comes to my mind when I think about this aliveness. There is a small town, about 20,000 inhabitants in the south of Russia called Zverevo. And for last 2 years, the mayor of this town was using the principles of integral development and heart-based leadership. And he really changed, he sort of woke up the collective self of the city, and the changes that they saw, and I visited and I saw it on the ground, are completely amazing. So the city from being, it's a mining town in the past, and the mining industry is gone. And so by using those heart-based leadership principles and integral development approach, and some other sort of frameworks we use, they have undergone a complete transformation, and the city today is alive from being a very sort of being in the degenerative sort of dynamics before. Over 2 years, it became #1 in many metrics in the macro region where it's situated. And so this, when I saw how people communicate there, they completely went from being, talking across the borders and across the sort of fences within the city to really trying to see the aliveness in each other, and whether you are a city official or an entrepreneur or a city community leader, they now operate from the sense of collective self, collective sort of intelligence. And when you see it in practice in a very simple sort of environment, it really shows how it could be transformative to a larger cities all over the world as well. So aliveness, inner child, and moving from an individual self to a collective self in our day-to-day operations. That's what I want to share with us today. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Lev. That's so rich and beautiful, and love that your daughter was there with us. And for those who don't know, in fact, in Russia, they didn't use Integral City as the name of the association, but Living Cities. So that is what they're aiming for, change in 1,000 cities to become alive by 2035. So beautiful. And now I want to call on Lynn. Lynn, can we hear you and or see you? I can see that your little frame is saying that there should be some sound there. Do you want to give it another try, Lynn? I'm afraid we can't hear you. So I will ask you to put your reflection in the chat so that we can hear what came up for you with your work in Shanghai as the ED for the natural step. We know that you're making a huge difference in China, and that we might be surprised about how you're using natural systems there. So I hope you have a little story of your own reflection that you can put in the chat. There's 2 more people that we want to hear from, but more briefly. One is Hugo and the other is Louis. And the reason that I have left them till the end is because they're fulfilling a special purpose. Hugo is actually creating a 7 vortex map that you can see on a separate screen. And Hugo, did you want to just give us an essence of what came up for you around thinking about cities as alive living systems?
Sorry, that was for me. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just focusing on nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. I wasn't ready, but I can do it. So for me, it seems like we're talking, and I put it more as a poetry, maybe, as cities where people create communities, and these communities actually make us to collectively question things, and to see these qualities and conditions that make us realize that there are collaboration and tensions there. And something that triggered my mind was this online and anonymous life sensing vibration factor that we could be inside or outside the cities. If we see it from nature, then I see it as an expression of intelligence, energy flows where contraction and expansion happens. And from biology, we have something alive, but we need this purpose of amplification. And we have these examples of body, reflection organ, slime, and rooting system. So I think as a living system, it is more about holding the space, but also emotions and feelings to create these connections and awareness, and especially being present in the place that we live. Is it okay?
Yeah, you're okay. You are okay. I was just waiting for Marilyn to pick up, and I think she might have been popped off the call.
Marilyn's gone.
Okay, thanks for the confirmation, Rick. Well, it's okay timing, because it was just going to shift over to me and Luis anyway. Thank you for that, Hugo. We'll call on you at the end of the call for a synopsis. And for folks, when I was outlining at the beginning of the call the roles that people are playing on the call, I neglected to mention what Hugo's role is. And in the chat, there have been links to the 7 Vortex work that he's been doing. What he's doing is he's capturing what's happening on the call and then mirroring it back to us. And when he's able to attend part 2, when we're meeting with each other and connecting with each other, he's going to pull that thread into when he's able. And Hugo's with us for the whole week. So thank you for that. And Luis, we're asking you to provide a different kind of reflection. And what we're asking of Luis is to draw on the threads of what our practitioners were just offering and give us some rigor, some handles on what it means for cities to think of them as living and complex adaptive systems. So quick introduction for Luis is he's the founder and director of the Organization for Environmental Education and Protection. And this is a nonprofit that's registered both in Colombia and the USA. And through that, he works has worked directly with over 100,000 children and youth and educators, integrating nature in their work. And he's also the co-founder of the Weaving Lab. And he also is a climate reality leader. This is fascinating to me, with the Climate Reality Project. And he's also part of the core team for the Regenerative Communities Network. So Luis, I'm very excited to have you here today and hear the combination of your work and the threads that have just been offered, and a gentle reminder that we're looking for 10 minutes, and then we'll re-engage with the reflective practitioners on what their reactions are to what you offer to us. So welcome to you, Luis.
Thank you very much, Beth. I'm really excited to be here. And I would like to start with kind of a brief composition of the reflections the practitioners made. And I'm dividing them in 3 areas of how cities engage. One is the dimensions, the other one's going to be the connections, and the other one is going to be the weave. And in listening to all of you, I was thinking that these 3 levels will have to integrate in some way, and we'll figure that out in a bit, I think. But in the dimensions, I was sensing, there's definitely an inward and an outward dimension. And this is really important because the inward dimension is not only individual, but it's also collective, and it's also the living system that a city is, and the ecoregion where the city is in. So there's many levels into this. Beyond in and out, there's peace and chaos. So how we can contrast, the peace and the chaos associated with the city. This was something that emerged for me. And associated to that, nature and the urban hustle. This is a good example of peace and chaos at some point, nature and the urban hustle and how those two interact. And this relates to aliveness and movement. I think one of the essential parts of cities that make them alive is this, their movement, the amount of energy that's moving around all the time. And this movement is of many ways. We heard of the trees moving, of the wind blowing, of the birds and the animals that are in the city, but we also heard of people walking, people talking, and people moving. And then we heard of everything that's happening behind that is allowing us to benefit and to live within the city. All the people that are working in the functional, operational parts of the city. So these dimensions for me are an important set just to put on the side. This is one of the elements. The second element is the connections. So when we look at cities that are alive, they're alive only because they have connections that are in contact, in constant interactions. There's energy in people and nature, and they are connecting all the time. And these connections are of two types: connections in what we know, so family connections, community connections of people we know, maybe connections with knowledge we know, connections with natural elements we know, but also connections in anonymity. And this was something really important that emerged for me listening. And it's, how do we know the other? And this is the question that arises. How can we really know the other? Is it really critical to know the other to have a live and thriving city? Or the way we know the other is via the heart and opening the heart to connect and know the other? So this became really important because the heart and our capacity to love ends up becoming the language of connections. If we look at a tree inside a city, are we allowing ourselves to connect through the heart? If we look at a stranger, that's walking in the city, are we allowing ourselves to connect through the heart? And this takes us to the dialogue, and then how we relate and start building those relationships and connections within the city. And this creates the feeling of liveliness in the city and gives it support. Next is the weave of the city. And this is associated to how people that hold the city, non-human people that hold the city, all the birds, all the insects, and all the other critters that are around us. The roots, I love this, thinking of the earth, underneath the city, and how all the roots. And I was thinking also the fungi and all the microorganisms that are underneath the city, that are literally holding the city, and the waterways that are connecting everything together. How does this come around? And this connects to the food, and why the weave becomes stronger is because the food, ultimately, when we put it in our mouth, there's a huge connection or line of actions that had to happen to get there. But it connects us directly to the soil outside the cities. And it shows us that a city is not a city in itself. A city is only a city in its ecoregion and in a living planet. So as a living city, we're only part of a larger organism. which is an ecoregion or a bioregion and a planet. And this is all associated to how we connect. So I think here, you know, if we look at the dimensions, maybe the dimensions are what give us the capacity of being and feeling. The connections allow us to give sense. And the weave is actually what makes cities become part of the planet in an integral and holistic perspective, and bring the intelligence of nature into the context of the city. So summarizing a little bit into my work, this relates to how we can activate the regenerative capacity. And from my work, activating the regenerative capacity has to do with activating our capacity to relate with ourselves, with others, and with nature in any context. And I think cities are a reflection of this. And I'll put in a little vortex also that we can see, so you can see this relationship. I have it right here. But activating our regenerative capacity really would require us to start looking into, you know, these levels of connections and of dimensions, so we can feel not as individuals part of a city that is functional to us, but also as individuals that are part of that living system. So we're cells, or we're small bits of interconnected everythingness. And I think this is key, because if we wake up every day within the city and allow ourselves to feel these connections, every time we see people walking, we try to open our hearts and feel these connections. If we see or hear the leaves moving on a tree, we try to project ourselves down to the roots. That will change our relationship deeply with how we relate to the cities. And I guess if the cities are a reflection of people that live in them in terms of their consciousness, this will shift people's consciousness. So ultimately, it'll end up shifting the whole city to become a conscious living city, a city where everybody is aware and conscious of, you know, how we are connected. And I think this is the key aspect to activating our regenerative capacity, because at that moment we can start interacting from the heart, interacting from a different level that allows us to collaborate, allows us to really synchronize in order to create cities that are thriving and that are living. And also it allows us to start transforming cities that we have today, and inviting nature, inviting more life, more connections, more sources of, you know, of energy, of this energy, vital energy that we were talking about, into the city in such a way that cities can really pick up and become that place where peace and chaos coexist in one, and they don't become polarities. They actually become part of the same. So this is some of the ideas that came out for me in the conversation, and I hope it brings a little bit of rustle into your minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. That is, that's lovely. The dimensions, the connections, and the weaving. And I appreciate how you wove in some of the words that the reflective practitioners spoke in their reflection. So thank you for that. That attention to detail is appreciated. I am going to invite our reflective practitioners and the audience. Let's just sit in quiet for about a minute and notice what your reaction is to what Luis was just sharing. And ask yourself, what are the implications of what Luis was just offering to you and the work that you do in your city or your community at whatever scale, whatever it is you do. And then I will call on the reflective practitioners for a reflection round before we close today to hear about what the implications are, what you know and understand differently about the work that you do, the contributions that you make. So we'll just sit in silence for a minute. and contemplate that. Thank you for that, Marilyn. And I'm going to zip up in the chat. And before I invite reflective practitioners, I just want to read in what Lynn sent in earlier about what makes the city feel alive, so we can hear her voice. So her reflection offered this: what has occurred to my mind is the pictures of the boutique clothing stores on the French concession in Shanghai, the smell and taste of the dumpling and wontons and spring onion pancakes from the small local restaurants with decades of histories, and the street views of all people and beautiful trees from the windows of all the small coffee shops in narrow but beautiful alleys in center Shanghai. They are something that make me feel replenished and recharged every time when I am near them. Also, as a living system, the dynamic of Shanghai can't be better explained by city as a living system. You can't find extremely fancy and modern everything. Sorry, you can find extremely fancy and modern everything. You can also find extremely local ways of living. The city truly adapts by itself and develops itself. Then, as what all living system has principles, then I start to reflect on what is the lower level principles of Shanghai. What exactly is what makes it unique in each city? So I'm going to call on our reflective practitioners, and we'll make room for Lynn to try again. So what I'm looking for are, what are the implications of what Luis just offered, and any takeaways that you have about the work that you do and your work? And raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and we'll do this rather quickly. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Yes, everyone, I would just like to appreciate that when I lost my connection, right at the point where I was asking Hugo to talk about the network, ironically, I could come back in and just feel the community that was alive here, and know that trusting the process, that Beth had picked it up, and I could hear this beautiful story that Luis was weaving together from the earlier stories. So I felt a strong, overpowering sense of gratitude and trust in our process, in our connections here. So I just want to thank everyone.
Thanks, Marilyn. Okay, Katerina, jump in. We're looking for a quick and pithy reaction from you.
Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking, because I'm involved in interconnecting the technology, that we are coming from this tradition that the technology don't have a soul, but now we develop so much of technology, and there is so many communities that are bringing this in artificial intelligence. And this on a city level, it's the hope of the cities to become with their own consciousness, without people. So we can start to imagine a cities without people, and they can work. It's something that it's a future that it's possible. And in the other hand, we have these communities here that we are trying to make the cities more human, that are not so much artificial. And to me, this is where the cities need to put the effort about the sense of belonging. I think the sense of belonging is so much human. I mean, it's part of our body, of our self, that it's where we interconnect and bring the mountains, the rocks that it seems that they don't have soul, that we can communicate and connect this spiritual level. And in my spiritual path, I meet this need of the human to recreate itself in the other levels of spirituality, you know. And today, with all this technology, all this virtual world that we have, I believe we can resolve for us some of the issues in our spiritual world, you know, in our spiritual evolution. And this is bringing to me a picture of a future that it's so strange, so different from where we are coming from, the 20th century, that the material was just without soul. And we are opening now these perceptions of multi-universe inside of the city in a sense that it's really tangible. And now listening to Luis, listening here to the reflections of feeling, I believe, I'm studying my children and they're so much different from my generation. And it's so strange to me to see how they are so fluently in multi-universes. For them, speaking about spiritual, about miracles and magic, it's a norm because of the technology, because of the virtual experience that they have.
And Katerina, you'll be in the chat in part 2, right? So
yes, thank you.
What I'd like, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be there, and you have this brilliant perspective on cities and technology. So if anyone would like to visit with Katerina more about this or hear more, like, come to part 2. And I see that Stanley's just put the link in. Katerina, I'm just going to make space for a few other voices before the end of the call. So who else would like to either build on what Katerina offered or offer something maybe different?
I will. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Patty. You know, the work that I do is working with the human in groups and in organizations and liberating the intelligence that is in there. And what I was so enlivened by Luis's work is I feel alive. I actually feel myself vibrating, listening to this conversation and feeling the connections, because it's creating those different dimensions. The images that are coming through are creating the different dimensions and the weaving in of this aliveness. I am so excited to continue to bring this back into the work of understanding self and others through the living systems. So I'm just feeling alive, really alive.
Perfect. Thank you, Patty. That's lovely. Ranjani, is there anything you would like to share at this point? Just a quick check-in, no obligation.
Very quickly, if I might.
Yes.
What we see very often in the practice of urban planning is to see the city as a resource, as something that you can exploit, something that you can go and take from. And what I saw in this conversation and what I felt more than saw was this sense of love and nurture. And how can we start looking at our cities as something to be treasured and nurtured, and how can we become custodians of the city and bring that spirit of saving it and giving it to the next generation. And I think this sort of mindset change is something that might really go a long way in bringing cities as real engines of sustainability and love in the world. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. I have a feeling, Mira Michelle, that you might have something to share. No obligation, just checking.
You're feeling me, sister. Well, the first thing is such deep gratitude to all of you. And Luis, that was just like splendid. I felt what you, my sister, was saying. Also, I felt this yearning. I was feeling the city, and I felt this yearning of the city system, of the human system, reaching towards that vibration which you spoke out from all of us, which you weaved in. And I love that you use the word weave also, because we women are weaving with energy. And just wanted to end with this picture. I think it's quite appropriate. This takes me like maybe 30 seconds to speak out. So I go to places and I reconnect the land with built structures. When there becomes a problem in the technique or how the people are living within their buildings and flats. And what I found one time outside of Geneva was that a building that was suffering, the electricity was suffering, the people in their houses weren't getting enough energy in the body. And actually the building, when they ripped down certain key trees, very old ones, and then didn't come to the land with a reflection or with a connectedness of exchanging information, right? Or sacredness or permission, we can go down that track, that underneath the building, the actual earth had pulled back her energy away from, maybe some of you have experienced this, away from the building, that the earth energy no longer sat underneath the dwelling. And that was fascinating because it really created certain problems that no one could solve actually. And it was not easy to reconnect it. It took a few days. So there is a real living explanation on the other side of how our brother weaved his dimension connection and weaving that together. It has very real results in our world. And I'm so excited to live in this future city.
Thank you for that. That's lovely, Mira Michelle. The weaving on the weaving, in the weaving, on the weaving, around the weaving, everywhere. I love it. I want to check in with a couple of other people before I pass on the close to Marilyn, who'll pull in Hugo. So a very quick check-in with Stanley and Lev and Lynn. So Stanley, let's have you jump in, and then I'm going to check in with Lynn, and then I'll check in with Lev and Luis. Lots of L's here. Okay, Stanley.
You. So I just want to follow up with Mira Michelle just talked about, which is the ability of the city to heal, or rather our ability to recognize that sometimes there is healing that needs to happen. And what Luis was painting is really a vivid picture of what a city when it's alive, would look like. That's the future city, but it's also a city that lives inside of us already. At least inside some of us who are longing for that. We are holding that as a picture, but also we are already moving towards that with our actions today through our work in different ways. And the thing that comes up for me is that I used to work as an engineer with infrastructure, and I used to work with a lot of architects. And what comes up for me is when we missed, during those days, this was 20 years ago, when we missed this vivid picture of an alive city, and also just even connecting what we are doing with the alive people that we are trying to serve with the infrastructure, we probably created a lot of what Mira Michelle is talking about, places where we created dissonance, we created separation instead of creating unity. And how can we sense back into that and do something about it? Because we can do something about it if we did sense into it.
That's beautiful, Stanley. Thank you. I'm going to make some space to hear if we can see if we can hear Lynn. And if we can't hear her, we'll get her to write it in. I'll check in with others, and then we'll be able to read in Lynn's comments. So Lynn, can we hear you? So we can't hear you, Lynn. So I'm going to invite you to type in the chat again, and then I'll come back to that after I hear from Lev. So Lev and Luis, I'd love to hear from you, just a quick wrap up kind of comment about what the implications are for your work. And then Marilyn and Hugo will close us out.
Well, it's interesting when you mentioned, can we hear Lynn? I tried to hear Lynn in my heart, and I
Oh,
did
good.
in a way, and it was so powerful that tears started to sort of roll from my eyes. But that's just a side reflection how we can connect to each other, not from the outside but from the inside. And my takeaway is that it really starts with each one of us, with me, in my environment, how alive and how aware am I. And the more I practice this aliveness, being alive, being aware, I can sort of transmit and catalyze the state in the people around me, and together we can really grow aliveness and awareness within our city to then grow the aliveness and awareness on the planet. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for this beautiful journey today.
Thank you, Lev. And I want to shine a light on Lynn's perseverance because it's now 1:31 in the morning for Lynn. So she's really hanging on. So we'll watch for Lynn's message. Luis, any closing observations from you?
Yes, just a quick one. Thank you, Lev, because I think the essence of our regenerative capacity lies within us and how we project and end up relating with everything else. And I was thinking, a city that is alive, or a live city, is actually a natural city. In order for it to thrive, it must create the conditions conducive to life. And this is an essential principle. And it's all about relations. And relations, start from ourselves, from within. So I do think that fostering this internal or self-love and respect capacity to relate is going to lead to create these smarter cities and integral cities. But also, if we open our hearts to let nature come back in, because a city is a natural city, we are nature. So we need to realize that cities cannot keep on growing without nature. And we need to bring in all these other inhabitants back in, because they give us the moments, of well-being. And we heard that yesterday. So this has to become a priority in every city in the world, is invite nature back in and start building relations that are respectful and full of love. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luis. Marilyn, over to you to close us out and weave in Hugo's live vortexing. And I will watch for Lynn's message in the chat.
Great. Thanks, Beth. And just give me a hand if you see that come in, because I'm looking at a different part of my screen. So Hugo, I've been seeing that you've been creating this incredible vortex from our discussion today. Would you like to just highlight that so we can put it on speaker view and see what it is that you've been noticing as you've been listening to everybody very intently?
Yes, Marilyn, thank you for the opportunity. I think in my previous intervention, I said something about it, and this is what I got from here. So the cities, I love this idea of the voices of the human hive, and I think what I would really like to share is this resonance on living systems, how holding emotions, feelings, connections, and awareness, but especially that we need to become a conscious community with movement of healers and weavers that help us to increase our capacity of love as part of an ecoregion, a planet, to increase our regenerative capacity from the peace and chaos that Luis was saying. Something else that I wanted to add is that being from Mexico City and being there in the earthquake, something enlightened that is called, during the earthquake in the night, one of them, it was tribal luminescence. So that made me realize that even below the roots, we have some minerals that were also shining light over the Mexico City. And I understood somehow why it's a sacred place. But what touched more my soul when I was there, is that after the earthquake, I saw a human change from 1 minute to another. So we all start to helping each other. And that brought this collective consciousness that we call it Fuerza Mexico, because we never see that coming. We saw it once when we had another earthquake, but it seems that cities could bring all this energy and positive force of helping each other and being kind with each other. So I think this is for me the most important message that I would like to share with all of you. The vortex is there, and it is about life. It is about bringing the living system, the nature wisdom into the equation. So how can we do that? Maybe we can help by technology, but at any case, we need to be quieting our cleverness and bringing really the best of nature to try to understand how a system works. So if we want a living system, of course it is alive, but if we want to be in alignment with the context, then we need to listen what the context is for everyone, not just the noises, the traffic and the lights that we have created, but how as a community we can be a reflection organ of regeneration. So thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. That's just beautiful. And Beth has something from Lynn now.
I do. She sent in a lovely, powerful question. So, reflection on implication, says Lynn. What I was thinking is that if a city is a living system, when it adapts and develops itself, what happens if the current system isn't the right system in terms of being sustainable?
Wow, what a beautiful question. And I really love how it connects and opens up the vortex of the network that Hugo has just offered us. And it's like, for me, many people ask me what's an integral city, and I say it's a framework of a living system that is evolutionary. And that when people think about working on the city, with the city, I say, actually, we are the city. We work as the city. And what I so appreciate today is that we've had the full spectrum of the city represented in your reflections, and that you have shared very authentically that they aren't, quote, merely physical or emotional or mental, but also spiritual. And the spirituality is something I remember from yesterday that Stanley brought in his very first introduction of himself, and said that he worked with love. And for me, this is the energy that is holding the living system. And that this is also something that came up with the relationships that we all shared. And Lev brought in his daughter, the next generation. And a number of you have referenced being able to embrace the city through multiple generations. And this is our bridge to tomorrow. We wanted to look this week at governance. So how do you look at governance in a living system? Well, most of us would grant that living systems are self-organizing systems, and at the same time, they have life cycles that they go through, like all living systems. And so tomorrow, that is what we're going to frame, an exploration of governance through life cycles in the city. I call it living intelligence. And so we recognize that living systems are extraordinarily intelligent. And as I started at the beginning with my own introduction, I do believe that we've been evolved by Gaia in her service. So if we can wake up and grow up to being in service to Gaia as her reflective organs, then cities are not only the places where this intelligence is really focused, but within it we have the organizations and the organelles, and as individuals, we are like the cells in those organs. And I think we're creating over the long term a whole planetary organ system that is in service to Gaia and in service to life. So I want to thank you very much, everyone, for all of your contributions today. And thank you, Beth, for bringing Lynn's voice in, both through checking the chat and also building the bridge for me when my little network went out. So we thank all of the technological gods as well. And now it's time to turn it back over to Jim.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Beth. Thank you all. This has been a splendid session. And I think your last comment, Marilyn, is the tonality that I would underscore. You know, we don't live in cities. We are cities. It's just like we don't live on the earth, we are earth. And I think, you know, Luis, what you were saying, and I love the fact that your background was the forest. We were talking about cities and your background was the forest, that, you know, we are an extension of the forest. We're an extension of nature. And as you all know, when they do the pictures from space of cities, we look like amoebas. We look like bacteria in size and scope and so forth, just like the research on the human brain. The human brain and the neurosynapses and the neurons are a microcosm of what the macrocosm of the entire universe looks like. So as above, so below, as within, so without, and cities are the fulcrum between those two worlds that shape us and challenge us in very powerful ways. So thank you, everyone. We will continue tomorrow, Wednesday, with more on cities and governance, as Marilyn just indicated. Same time, same station, 5 p.m. Central European time. And then I want to invite everybody into the after session chats. Our ChatAction group has been very, very dynamic, and also call people's attention to the course that Marilyn and Beth and others have developed that will be launching next week, Beyond Resilience, which is a discussion of how the cities can lead us into the post-pandemic world. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.